Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have another set of great stories about crazy people and their revenge for you to enjoy. Subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. To the story. Park in such a way as I cannot get out and ignore the hammering on your door? A few years ago, I lived in a house that had on-street only parking. The tiny terrace had no front garden that could be converted, but this was generally not an issue. There was an abundance of parking on the other side of the street, however, there were a small number of drop curbs for the houses opposite that had very long driveways. In general, it was possible to get 4 cars between each drop curb. As I worked long hours, sometimes the only parking was a short walk up or down the road when I got back late in the evening. This was never an issue for me. My neighbor had 2 cars, a VW Polo and a VW Golf. The Polo belonged to Mrs. Next Door, and she was obsessed with parking in the spot that was opposite her front door. One evening, I parked in an available spot over the road as usual. I parked behind Mr. Next Door's Golf. I left a normal-sized gap in front and space behind for a smaller car. In the morning, I went out to go to work, and Mrs. Next Door's Polo was parked about 5 millimeters from my rear bumper. I spent a few minutes going back and forth trying to unpark and realized it was futile. So I left my car and knocked on their door. No answer. I hammered on the door. The upstairs curtains twitched, but they would not come to the door. I took a couple of photos just in case I needed to prove anything later, so I got back in my car, a Ford Sierra 2.8i Ghia 4x4 Estate, reversed up to her car until the bumpers were touching, then gently pushed it out of the way, just enough to get out and go to work. That night, I got home and parked a little further away from Mr. Next Door's Golf and left a decent-sized space behind me. The next day, the Polo was actually touching my car. Again, a quick photo just in case. I nudged it out of the way and went to work. For an entire week, this was the game that they would play. Each day, I took a photo. Until Saturday morning. On Saturday morning, I noticed that my Sierra was sandwiched between the Golf and the Polo. I had perhaps 10 millimeters total space. So I did what any normal person would do and hammered on their door, but got no response. I called my friend Dave, who had the world's rattiest Land Rover Discovery. Between us, while they were watching, I nudged the Polo backwards far enough for me to get out. Dave then nudged it forward so that it was almost touching the Golf, and then left the Disco sitting right behind it. I then pulled up in front of the Golf, leaving about 2 millimeters, and parked up. Both the Disco and the Sierra were left in gear with the wheels pointing to the curb with the handbrake on. And we went inside and made some breakfast. Mrs. Next Door was a mobile hairdresser at the time, and she obviously had to visit some clients, but as both cars were totally blocked, she was unable to do so. They did not knock on my door. They called the police, who came down and took a look. I explained carefully what had been going on and showed them the photos that I'd taken each day for the last week. I mentioned that they'd not answered their door and they'd not actually asked me to move. The policeman suggested that we do not bother driving anywhere until Monday and that we would field any calls that came in reporting it. When we finally released the cars late on Monday morning, both the Golf and the Polo were quickly moved far up the road, and they never parked even slightly close to my car again. Since you want to judge me for taking the 2nd floor, have fun waiting for the elevator. I was waiting at the elevators. Didn't take too long since my apartment building's not that big. I get inside, and right when the door closes, a hand pushes through. She looked like your typical middle-aged Karen. She presses the 17th floor and takes one look at my floor, which was the 2nd. She scoffs, glares at me, and says, "The 2nd floor? Really?" Didn't take much to pee me off. Her comment was so unnecessary and uncalled for. Who cares if it was the 2nd floor? It's my decision whether to take the stairs or not. I just finished an overnight shift and I was exhausted. I guess my exhaustion made me extra moody because when I reached my floor, she was scrolling through her phone. I quickly run my hands through as many buttons as I could and say, "Have fun, B," right when the door closes. And because I was extra exhausted, therefore extra moody and petty, I pressed the up button when the elevator barely reached the 3rd floor so I can use the other elevator and press a bunch of buttons again to further inconvenience her, just in case she decided to get off on the 3rd floor to take the other elevator. Take the stairs then if it's not that big a deal. Just don't be effing rude to your neighbors for riding the elevators to the second floor. You don't know if they're exhausted or if they have non-visible health conditions that make it hard for them to take the stairs. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.